Thank you, Bill. For over half a century, indeed, ever since the close of World War II, the United States has had twin objectives. One was to maintain a strong deterrent, originally focused on the Soviet Union, and the other was to prevent proliferation. Back in the 1950s, President Eisenhower proceeded with his Atoms for Peace program. We created the IAEA. In the 1960s, we created the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Bill has spoken about those aspects. I am going to focus on the first objective, the first component, to wit, the sustainment of the nuclear deterrent. It is not always understood that the heart of our deterrent effort has always been extended deterrence. The problem of protecting the United States itself here in North America requires a relatively modest force. It is the requirement for extended deterrence during the early years, in particular, of protecting Western Europe against a presumed or hypothetical Soviet Union Warsaw Pact invasion that required the substantial buildup of our nuclear forces. That has gone away. In the course of that action, we have reduced our dependence on nuclear weapons. We have radically reduced the nuclear stockpile and the deployed weapons, an 80% reduction. But whatever requirements remain must be sustained, as Bill said, a secure, reliable deterrent, as the President has said, a strong deterrent as long as other nations have that capability. The job of extended deterrence has become somewhat more complicated in recent years because of the expansion of NATO to include former Soviet satellites that do not trust entirely the Russian Federation and are very wary about reductions, particularly any unilateral reductions in our deterrent. That is the reason behind the insistence by the Commission that any reductions be bilateral by agreement with the Russian Federation, which maintains all in all a larger total force than the United States. Another aspect of that has been the change in the Western Pacific. Japan never felt seriously threatened by the Soviets' nuclear capability. There was a substantial body of water between Soviet forces and Japan. Soviet forces in the Far East were relatively weak until their buildup against China rather than Japan. But with the rise, the modest rise of Chinese nuclear forces, more attention needs to be paid to the extended deterrence for Japan. And in the course of that, the Commission has agreed that it will be necessary for the United States to have the same kind of discussions with Japan that the United States has for the last 35 years conducted with our European partners. As I mentioned, all reductions will have to be bilateral. There should be no unilateral reductions on the part of the United States. That would cause concern, and one must recognize that the logic of extended deterrence means that we are as much concerned about deterring a major attack, we are less concerned about deterring a major attack on the United States than we are about providing the necessary assurance for the 30-odd countries that rest under the protection of the U.S. nuclear umbrella. Two other points. The Commission were all agreed that the United States will have to maintain a strong deterrent for what is, quote, the indefinite future. We see no possibility of a significant reduction in our responsibilities, although we see the possibility of the reduction of nuclear weapons. In addition, with respect to the abolition of nuclear weapons, a hope for which was expressed by some members of the Commission and has been expressed by President Obama, that the Commission took the view that any abolition of nuclear weapons would require a transformation of international politics, unquote. I think that one can make one's own personal assessment as to the likelihood of such a transformation taking place. I should close by saying that sometimes one hears or reads in the press that these weapons will never be used. That is a fallacy. These weapons are used every day, and that the deterrent is always there, protecting the United States and its allies against major attack. To say that these weapons would never be used implies that unless we use them against targets, to detonate those targets, that they are not being used. And that is a misunderstanding of the nature of deterrence and a misunderstanding, in particular, of a nuclear deterrent. Years ago, the issue of our nuclear posture used to be central to sustained national debate. It no longer is, but it needs to have greater attention paid to it, and that is a conclusion of all the members of this commission. Thank you.